if the global food system disappeared tomorrow. Most people wouldn't know how to survive for long. Not because food is gone, but because people forgot how to recognize it. No backup, no plan, no idea what's already growing beneath their feet. But thousands of years ago, entire civilizations survived on plants the modern world has almost completely forgotten. Plants written in the Bible. Plants that endured drought, collapse, and the fall of empires, and never disappeared. Here's what most people never stop to ask. These plants weren't lost because they stopped working. They were replaced by faster, cheaper systems. And over time, the knowledge quietly faded. But the plants didn't. They are still here, still growing, still producing, right now. And one of them could grow in your backyard, quietly producing food for decades. The same way it sustained entire civilizations long before supermarkets ever existed. Most people will scroll past this. The ones who don't are the ones who see what others miss. Stay until number 4, the plant Jesus used as the symbol of faith itself. A seed so small it disappears in your hand, yet grows into something massive. And stay until number 10, because when researchers studied this final tree, they had to repeat the results multiple times, just to confirm what they were seeing. A tree that has survived thousands of years of desert, and is still producing today. Almost no one is paying attention to it, and that's exactly why almost no one benefits from it. But you're still here, which means you're already ahead of most people watching this. Subscribe to Sacred Root Co. And let's begin. Number 1. Barley. The grain that outlived every empire. Picture a harvest morning in ancient Judea. The air smells of dry earth and warm grain. Men and women move through tall golden stalks, their hands working with the rhythm of 1,000 years of practice. This is barley, and its story is older than almost anything else your hands have ever touched. 10,000 years. Before the wheel. Before written language existed, human hands across entire civilizations were already pressing this seed into the earth, passing the knowledge forward generation by generation, never once writing it down, because they did not yet have the words. Barley, Hordeum vulgare, is one of the oldest cultivated grains on earth, and the ancient world did not choose it by accident. But that is not the shocking part. In the Gospel of John, a young boy came forward with 5 barley loaves. Not wheat, not bread baked for kings. Barley, the food of ordinary families, of the poor. Jesus took those 5 loaves, gave thanks, and fed 5,000 people. 12 full baskets remained. The scripture is precise. It was barley, at the center of one of the most remembered miracles in the entire Bible. But here is the part no one talks about. Barley grows in soil that defeats every other grain. Dry, rocky, thin, slightly salty. Where nothing else takes root, barley does. It tolerates drought that kills wheat entirely. Ancient communities grew it not because it was fashionable, but because nothing else would grow. And barley always would. Modern agriculture shifted it out, replaced by faster yield grains that needed more water, more inputs, more infrastructure. And the moment families stopped knowing these plants, they became dependent on whoever controlled the shelves. But barley never left. It was here 10,000 years before the system changed. It will be here long after. Barley contains beta-glucan fiber at roughly 3 times the concentration found in standard oats, one of the highest levels of any grain measured. It also carries vitamins B1, B3, and B6, alongside magnesium, phosphorus, manganese, and selenium. Today, it is in almost every supermarket. Whole grain, pearl, flour, water. Look for it this week. It grows in weeks from seed. It needs almost no maintenance. It thrives in containers. You are picking up something that has been feeding families since before history had a name. The system feeds you for today. The earth feeds you for generations. The future of food is not in factories. It is in what we forgot how to grow. The earth remembers what the world forgets. Number 2. Sorrel. The Passover plant growing near you right now. This plant sat on the Passover table the night the Israelites prepared to leave Egypt forever. And right now, it is probably within 200 meters of where you are sitting. Most people walk past it every single day without knowing what they are looking at. What if you have walked past it 1,000 times without knowing it sat on the Passover table the night the Israelites prepared to leave Egypt forever? That plant is sorrel, and it is probably within 200 meters of you right now. Sorrel, genus Rumex, is a wild perennial with a sharp, intensely bitter flavor recognized in every ancient Near Eastern household. In Exodus chapter 12, God commanded the Israelites to eat the Passover lamb with bitter herbs. Scholars and botanists consistently identify sorrel among the most likely candidates. It was everywhere, unmistakable, and its bitterness carried the precise weight the instruction required. Ancient Egyptians cultivated it along the Nile. Greek and Roman cooks prized it in early spring salads. Medieval monastery gardens grew it through dark winters. And this is where it gets strange. This plant was gradually replaced, quietly, with imported greens that needed supply chains and refrigeration. But sorrel never agreed to disappear. It still grows along roadsides, in abandoned fields, in parks, on hillsides, almost anywhere with moisture and light. A plant that outlived every civilization that ever grew it, still free, still wild, still producing. No one planted it. No one maintains it. And somehow, it never disappeared. It just stayed. Sorrel is a meaningful natural source of vitamin C. Modern research continues to study its flavonoids and polyphenolic compounds. The ancient world depended on this plant's persistence, and it responded by spreading itself across the entire earth. Look for lance-shaped leaves and a faintly reddish stem the next time you walk outside. It is closer than you think. This doesn't require money. It doesn't require a garden. It doesn't require any system at all. Just the knowledge of what you're looking at. Number 3. Juniper. The tree that fed a prophet for 40 days. The prophet Elijah had just done something extraordinary. He had called down fire from heaven on Mount Carmel. He had ended a 3-year drought with a single prayer. And then, immediately after, alone, hunted, and completely broken, he ran into the desert, sat down under a tree, and asked God to let him die. That tree was a juniper. 1 Kings chapter 19. Elijah sat under a rotham tree, identified by biblical scholars as the desert juniper, and said simply, "It is enough. Take away my life." He lay down. He slept. And then everything changed. An angel appeared, not with fire, not with power, with food. Arise and eat. A cake baked on coals. A jar of water. Because the journey is too great for you. Elijah ate. The angel came a second time, and that single meal sustained him for 40 days and 40 nights of travel across the desert to Horeb, the mountain of God. Stop for a second. The juniper did not perform a miracle. It offered what it had. Shade. Shelter. A place to stop. And sometimes, that is all a person needs to survive. That should make you pause. Juniperous species grow from the Arctic Circle to the Sahara. Some individual specimens have been dated to over 1,000 years old. In ancient Egypt, juniper berries were placed in the tomb of Tutankhamun, among the provisions for the afterlife. The flavor of gin is, to this day, juniper berries, traded across the ancient Mediterranean for their preservative power and aromatic wood. Traditional practitioners from the ancient Near East to Northern Europe to indigenous North America all independently documented the same properties of this plant. When civilizations with zero contact arrive at the same plant, that convergence is not coincidence. What's interesting is, we are only now beginning to understand exactly why. The tree of Elijah's despair and restoration is still growing in the deserts of the ancient world, still offering what it always has. Number 4. Mustard. The smallest seed with the biggest story. This is the plant we told you about at the very beginning, the one Jesus chose above all others as the symbol of faith. You stayed for this. Here it is, 1 millimeter across, 1,000th of a gram. You could hold 1,000 of them in one hand and still have room. And Jesus looked at the people gathered on a Galilean hillside and said, The kingdom of heaven is like this. He was not speaking poetically. He was standing in a landscape where his audience could look across the actual hillsides and see exactly what he meant. Black mustard, Brassica nigra, grows to 2, sometimes 3 meters tall, dense, yellow flowering, sheltering. Birds nest in its branches. His audience had watched this happen in their own fields. The contrast he was pointing to was not abstract. It was botanical reality, visible from where they stood. Ancient Egyptians placed mustard seeds in tomb offerings alongside gold and precious oils. Sanskrit texts from India document mustard cultivation, going back over 5,000 years. Apicius included it in one of the oldest surviving culinary texts in antiquity. Hippocrates documented it. Dioscorides described it. No one who encountered this seed dismissed it. But here is the part most people miss. Mustard grew in poor soil, without irrigation, without any system to support it. Just like barley, it thrived precisely where everything else failed. It asked for nothing and fed everyone around it. Mustard seeds contain glucosinolates, sulfur compounds that produce that characteristic burning heat when crushed and combined with liquid. Modern researchers have studied these compounds extensively in cruciferous vegetable research, currently one of the most active areas in nutritional science. Mustard is also a source of selenium, magnesium, phosphorus, and omega-3 fatty acids. The parable was not chosen for the mustard plant. The mustard plant earned the parable. And every day this knowledge stays forgotten, one more family misses it. Seeds are in any grocery store. They germinate within days. No special soil, no greenhouse, no prior experience needed. Grow some this season. Watch something barely visible become tall enough to shade your hand. Number 5. Flax. The sacred cloth that wrapped the resurrection. There is a detail in the Gospel of John that most people read straight past. When the disciples ran to the empty tomb on the morning of the resurrection, what they found was not emptiness. They found the linen burial cloths, lying there, folded. That linen was flax. The resurrection was first witnessed not by a voice or a vision, but by the quiet presence of folded cloth made from a plant. Think about that. Linen, woven from Linum usitatissimum, the flax plant, was the fabric of the sacred across the entire ancient world. In Exodus, God gave Moses precise instructions for the priestly garments of the tabernacle. Every single one. The robe, the turban, the sash, fine linen specifically, not wool, not cotton, not any substitute. The fabric chosen to clothe those who stood in the presence of God. And then something unexpected happened in Jericho. When the 2 Israelite spies entered the city before the conquest, Rahab hid them under stalks of flax drying on her rooftop. The plant that clothed priests and wrapped the dead also hid the living at the moment of greatest danger. In ancient Egypt, flax was cultivated along the Nile for over 6,000 years. The finest Egyptian linen, called byssus, was described by ancient writers as woven air, almost transparent, more valuable by weight than gold fabric of equal size. Modern agriculture shifted flax almost completely out of commercial clothing, replaced by synthetics that were cheaper to scale. But the nutritional value of flaxseed remained. Flax seeds contain alpha-linolenic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid, at concentrations placing them among the richest plant-based omega-3 sources anywhere. They contain lignans, compound subjects of ongoing scientific research. Hippocrates used flaxseed. The Ebers Papyrus documents it. 3 separate ancient medical traditions arrived independently at the same plant. You can buy whole flax seeds in any grocery store right now. A plant that clothed prophets, wrapped the resurrection, and hid the living, still available. Still nutritious, still here. We are at the halfway point. Now, everything changes. Most people think survival depends on what you store. But ancient civilizations survived based on what they could regrow. That difference changes everything about what comes next. If you have watched this far, you are already ahead of 90% of people who will never know any of this. What comes next is the half most people never reach. Stay with us. Number 6. Date palm, the 400-year food machine. One tree, 100 kilograms of food every year for 100 years. Almost no water. Let that land. Before I tell you which tree, say this number slowly. 7,000 years. Archaeological evidence from Mesopotamia traces deliberate date palm cultivation back 7,000 years, before written language existed, before most civilizations had names. The date palm, Phoenix dactylifera, appears in the Bible under the Hebrew name Tamar, a name so honored it was given to people. Jericho was called the City of Palms. Deborah, prophetess, judge, one of the most significant leaders in the entire Old Testament, held court beneath a palm tree. The people of Jerusalem brought palm branches to welcome Jesus on Palm Sunday. Babylonian texts cataloged over 300 distinct uses for this single tree. Not one plant. 300 products. One tree. But this is where everything changes. One mature date palm produces up to 100 kilograms of fruit every single year. That is enough to feed 50 people for a week, on minimal water, in conditions where almost nothing else survives. And a single tree continues this production for over a century. One tree, 100 kilograms of food every year, for 100 years, with almost no water, in the desert. No industrial crop can replicate this. Modern agriculture requires irrigation, fertilizer, machinery, infrastructure, entire supply chains coordinating across continents, and still fails in arid conditions. A single date palm, standing alone in open desert, outproduces what the system cannot. One tree feeding people for a week, while modern systems struggle to do the same. The date palm asks for almost nothing, and gives almost everything. Ancient communities knew this. That is why they planted dates first, before houses, before walls, before anything else. If this kind of knowledge matters to you, you already know what to do. Dates provide natural sugars for rapid and sustained energy. Dietary fiber, potassium, magnesium, copper, manganese, vitamin B6, and flavonoids. You can find them in virtually every grocery store right now. And if you live in a warm, dry climate, you can grow your own tree. You could start this week. One seed, one pot, one decision. Number 7. Grapevine. The covenant plant from the flood to the cross. The first thing Noah did when the floodwaters receded was plant a vineyard. After the destruction, after months on the water, after the unimaginable weight of everything lost, the first agricultural act of the renewed world was a man pressing vine cuttings into freshly exposed soil, as if nothing else needed to happen first, as if the vine came before the house. Similar to flax, similar to barley, the vine asked for almost nothing, and gave everything back. Close your eyes for a moment. You are standing in a field 2,000 years ago. No roads, no stores, no systems, only what you can grow. Only what your family knows how to tend. This vine, right here, is the difference between enough and nothing. The grapevine, Vitis vinifera, carries a covenant meaning that runs from the first chapter of renewed civilization straight to the final meal before the crucifixion. The oldest wine residues ever found, discovered in clay jars in Georgia, date to approximately 6,000 BC. In Numbers 13, the 12 spies sent into Canaan returned carrying a single cluster of grapes so heavy that 2 men carried it on a pole between them. That cluster was not just food. It was proof. The land was real. The abundance could be carried home in human hands. And this is where it gets extraordinary. In the Gospel of John, the first miracle Jesus performed was not healing. He turned 180 liters of water into wine at a wedding in Cana. The master of the feast declared the groom had saved the best for last. At the Last Supper, Jesus lifted the cup and gave the fruit of the vine a meaning that has not faded in 2,000 years. And in John 15, he said, "I am the true vine, not bread, not grain." The vine was not an illustration. It was the identity he chose. Grapes contain resveratrol, concentrated in the skin, a compound that has generated decades of sustained research interest in nutritional science and longevity studies. They contain quercetin, anthocyanins, and seed proanthocyanidins, among the most potent antioxidant compounds measured in any plant food. A grapevine planted today produces fruit in its second or third year and continues for decades. The vine that carried a covenant from the mountains after the flood to the table the night before the crucifixion is still here, still growing, still producing. Number 8. Carob, the desert tree that named a unit of gold. If you have ever bought gold jewelry, if you have ever had a gemstone weighed, if you have ever heard the word karat, you have been carrying, without knowing it, the memory of this tree. The word karat, Arabic, kirat, Greek, karation, the pod of the carob tree. Ancient merchants discovered that carob seeds were so remarkably uniform in size and weight that they became the standard calibration weights on scales used to measure gold and precious stones. That consistency became the foundation of the measurement system still used by every jeweler on Earth today. The carob tree did not just feed ancient people, it gave the world the vocabulary of value itself. This tree was gradually edged out of Western awareness, not because it stopped producing, but because industrial sugar and cocoa were cheaper to distribute at scale. Carob, which grew wild in poor soil and needed no infrastructure, faded from daily life. But it never disappeared. The carob tree, Ceratonia siliqua, is gnarled, drought-tolerant, ancient. Its pods contain sweet, fibrous flesh high in natural sugar, almost miraculous in landscapes where sweetness was rare and calories were precious. And what happened next makes no sense until you understand what this tree meant. In the Gospel of Luke, in the parable of the prodigal son, the young man who has wasted his inheritance finds himself longing for the pods the pigs were eating. Biblical scholars widely identify those pods as carob, the absolute bottom of the son's fall. And the turning point of that story begins precisely there. In a carob field, carob contains natural sugars, dietary fiber, calcium, and iron. Unlike cocoa, it contains no caffeine and no theobromine. Carob flour, powder, and syrup are in health stores today. The carob tree grows in poor soil, tolerates extreme drought, produces food where most fruit trees simply refuse to grow. If you live in a warm, dry climate, plant one. And the longer this knowledge stays buried, the more of it disappears. Not from the earth, from the people who could use it. Number 9. Lentil, the meal that bought a birthright and named a nation. What if I told you that one of the most consequential decisions in all of human history was made over a bowl of food? Not gold, not land, not an army, a bowl of lentils. In Genesis 25, Esau came home from the fields exhausted and faint with hunger. Jacob had prepared a thick red stew. Esau said, "Let me eat some of that red stuff. I am exhausted." Jacob replied, "First sell me your birthright." And Esau agreed. The entire inheritance of the firstborn son, his rights, his claim, his place in the covenant, exchanged for a single meal. The Hebrew text calls that stew Adam. Red. From that moment, Esau received a second name, Edom, the red one. An entire people, the Edomites, named forever for a bowl of food. Let that sink in. And then, something unexpected happened to lentils in the modern world. The same system that shifted barley, carob, and flax out of daily life quietly pushed lentils to the margins too. Branded as peasant food. Too simple. Too cheap. But here is the part no one expected. Modern nutritional science confirmed what 10,000 years of use already knew. Lentils contain approximately 25% protein by dry weight, notably high among plant-based sources. They are rich in iron, folate, manganese, phosphorus, and dietary fiber. And they fix nitrogen in the soil. They leave the earth richer than they found it. Lentil seeds have been recovered from Neolithic settlements 10,000 years old across the ancient Near East. They were provisions before supply chains existed. Currency before coins existed. A cup of cooked lentils. Water. 20 minutes. No soaking. No machinery. No system. Just a pot. a fire, and 10,000 years of knowledge that what comes out of that pot is enough. This does not require land. It does not require money. It does not require any system at all. Just knowledge. Number 10. Moringa. The miracle tree science had to study twice. This is the tree we mentioned at the very beginning. The one researchers had to study multiple times just to confirm what they were seeing. You waited for this. In the ancient world, there was a tree people spoke about differently from all the others. A tree with edible leaves, edible seeds, edible flowers, edible pods, and an oil so chemically stable that it never spoiled, not in desert heat, not after a year in a sealed clay jar. A tree that grew in the most hostile soil on earth. Cut to the ground, it regrew from its roots within weeks. Researchers who studied this tree found results significant enough to repeat the experiment multiple times, just to confirm what they were seeing. This is Moringa oleifera, called the drumstick tree, called the miracle tree, called shigru in ancient Sanskrit, recorded as one of the most significant plants in the entire Ayurvedic pharmacopoeia. Ancient Egyptians pressed its seed oil for sacred preparations. Archaeologists have recovered that oil in sealed vessels, still chemically stable after 3,000 years. Egyptian physicians used the leftover seed cake as a water clarifier, dropping it into turbid Nile water and watching the suspended particles fall out of solution, leaving the water clear enough to drink. Now, where does this tree appear in Scripture? In Exodus chapter 15, 3 days after the crossing of the Red Sea, the Israelites arrived at Marah. The water was bitter, undrinkable. The people were desperate. God showed Moses a specific tree. He told him to throw it into the water. Moses obeyed. The bitter water became sweet. Biblical scholars have long discussed which tree this was. But among trees documented across the ancient Near East for water purification, Moringa holds a well-confirmed and repeatedly documented position. Its seed powder contains natural coagulants, compounds that cause suspended particles to aggregate and fall out of solution. Modern water treatment engineers have studied this same mechanism as a practical, low-technology solution for communities without access to chemical treatment. The tradition is ancient. The science is confirmed. Dried moringa leaf contains all 9 essential amino acids, making it one of the very few plant foods widely considered a complete protein source. Iron notably higher than spinach. Calcium often compared to dairy. Vitamin C surpassing many citrus fruits, according to nutritional analyses. In a single handful of dried moringa leaves, you may find more nutritional density than most modern meals combined. All storable, without refrigeration, for months. The World Health Organization has promoted moringa cultivation in food-insecure regions, specifically because of this. A tree producing year-round nutrition in conditions where every other food source has already failed. This tree was gradually overlooked by modern agriculture. Because it grows in sand, in heat, in places where supply chains don't reach, modern systems evolved toward what was scalable and profitable. And moringa, growing wild and free, simply didn't fit that model. So it faded from awareness. But it never disappeared. Even today, in parts of rural Africa, India, and the Middle East, families still rely on this exact tree as their primary source of daily nutrition. Not as a supplement, not as a trend, as food. The way it has always been. Ancient people across the Sahel, the Indian subcontinent, and the ancient Near East cultivated it because they understood something your world has made it easy to forget. There will always be a season when your ordinary sources fail. There will always be a drought. There will always be a moment when your shelves are not full and the road to your next supply is longer than expected. In that moment, the tree that fed the desert will still be standing, still leafing, still feeding, still here. You can grow moringa now in zones 9 and above. It germinates in days, produces harvestable leaves within weeks, requires almost no maintenance once established. In cooler climates, a single pot on a windowsill keeps it alive through winter. Dried leaf powder is in health stores today. No garden required. 6,000 years of knowledge, still available, still waiting. The earth remembers what the world forgets. This matters. Most people ignore this. The ones who don't change what their families eat for generations. These 10 plants were never supposed to be forgotten. They fed prophets and priests. They sustained soldiers across 3 continents. They outlasted every empire that was ever built above them. And every single one of them is still available to you. To grow. To eat. To pass on. The system moved on. The earth did not. The earth remembers what the world forgets. Because the knowledge that feeds your family should never be lost again. Tell us in the comments, which of these plants would you grow in your own home? Which one stopped you, where faith, history, and survival came together in a way you did not expect? We read every single one. We want to know where in the world you are watching from. Share this video with someone who needs it. Not tomorrow, right now. Subscribe to Sacred Root Co. Every video goes deeper into the intersection of ancient wisdom, scripture, botanical history, and the science still catching up to what the ancient world already knew. Next time, plants traded for more than gold. Records older than writing itself. And one discovery that researchers describe as rewriting what we thought we knew about ancient nutrition. Only for those who return. And what comes next goes even deeper. These plants never disappeared. We just stopped looking. Now you know where to start. You were not supposed to forget this. And now that you remember, you can't unsee it. The ones who know, eat differently, think differently, prepare differently. And the difference is simply who remembers. That person could be you.